Thank you for listening in to these updates to the Safe Water Conservation Collaborative's GIS Prioritization Model. The goal is after you would watch this presentation that you would please share with us your thoughts on the updated model using Jamboard. I will have sent you that link in a separate email. It's also on this slide here, with the goal of specifically getting from you all some answers and what, if any, remaining questions do you have after watching the presentation? In general, do you approve of these updates? Can we move forward with incorporating these into our modeling and any other feedback that you would have? So just a quick update on the process that we've set out for ourselves. Back in 2019, in August, we first started talking about this prioritization modeling. We had some meetings in September and October to hone in on that. And then by December of 2019, we formally approved the GIS Prioritization Model v1 that we've been using for our outreach over the last year. In January of this year, the work group met to discuss some potential updates to this prioritization modeling based off of some survey feedback over the last year, folks letting us know what they thought about the v1 model, and a discussion that we had on January 15th that resulted in the steps that you'll be seeing today, the updates that we're proposing based on that January 15th conversation. So in general, just to give an update again on the prioritization model that we did, we selected from within Berkeley and Jefferson counties parcels that were greater than 20 acres in size and within drinking water protection areas, resulting in about 1,100 targeted parcels in our first model. We looked at 10 different indicator data sets for water quality characteristics, important programmatic features, or geographic indicator. We then scored on the parcel level each of those 10 indicators on a 0 to 20 score based off of predefined stepped up thresholds, and then added those up with parcels closest to the maximum score of 200 being the highest priority. The mapping and what our updates look like, and you'll see those in red. The biggest one was in the filtering process, where we selected parcels that were greater than 20 acres in size, and it marks recommendation in the group's conversation on January 15th. We looked at parcels that were also that had compatible land uses, and we'll talk in this presentation about what those were. And then we classified those parcels. They're greater than 20 acres in size with compatible land uses as valued lands. And from that valued lands layer, we then further selected parcels that were within drinking water protection areas. So again, they were greater than 20 acres in size. They had a compatible land use. They would be compatible with a conservation easement, and they were within drinking water protection areas. And we classified those as most valued lands. And combined, that resulted in about 2,200 targeted parcels. All of the 10 indicators were the same. We did a very similar process for scoring, but instead of using a stepped up incremental scoring, we use minimum and maximum thresholds, and I'll explain what those were. And the process was the same. We added those up, the maximum score of 200 being the highest priority, and wanted to make it clear here, what we're prioritizing is our outreach. Talk about that. Just some important notes. That meeting that we had January 15th was to pursue minor updates. So this is not a major structural change to the indicators or to the overall process. With that, only real substantial change was in that filtering process. Just like with our V1, this is just the first update to that first iteration. So it's just a v1.1. We're still not going to get 100% right, and that's okay. It's an iterative process. We are going to take steps as we go to update, to keep this active, and we should just state that up front, but also accept that. Lastly, on this page, that all of the properties that we've targeted protect drinking water, which is the overall mission of the partnership. And we'll talk about the different ways that some symbology tricks that we can do will help convey that better. But really what we're doing with this modeling process is that we're targeting parcels that we consider valued lands. They demonstrate to the community so the community can generally understand which types of parcels we consider most important for conservation easements. And then we further prioritized those valued lands for using internally to prioritize outreach. So to walk through the steps for this v1.1 updated model. It was filtering parcels greater than 20 acres in size with compatible land uses, classifying those as valued lands, and then furthermore, of those valued lands, the ones were within drinking water protection area. What you'll see on this map, the land uses that are shown in red here, the ones that are darker red, darker orange, the vacant utility land, vacant exempt land, and vacant industrial land, those will be backed out and not included in the final modeling process. So what's shown on this list in black, all of the ones under confirmed, and then 102, 103, and 104 are what we'll consider compatible land uses. The filtering process, and the other half is large parcels that have compatible land uses or valued lands. And then within those, if they are also one of those parcels that is within a drinking water protection area, it would be a most valued land. There are about 130 community water systems identified by West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources within these two counties. And they have one of three different kinds of drinking water protection areas. A zone of critical concern, which is a location that anywhere that you see on red here in this map, if a contaminant were to enter the water supply, or it would enter into a surface stream, it would reach the water supply, the intake on that surface stream, within 5 hours. So there's a 5-hour travel time between a contaminant entering into the surface water, reaching the intake for the drinking water supply. So that's a zone of critical concern, and yellow is a zone of peripheral concern. Same definition, just a 10-hour travel time. And then in blue are wellhead protection areas. Those are delineated a little bit differently, but again, in generally saying within this area, there's a likelihood that if a contaminant would enter onto the land, it could enter into the underground drinking water supply that's connected to that wellhead. So those are drinking water protection areas, and if you put those two things together, you end up with this list of about 2,200 targeted parcels. Again, there's about 50 parcels. There's those three land uses that are going to be backed out of this. So what you're saying, there's a few that are going to be backed out of this. But in general, this is what our list of, or our map of targeted parcels look like. In light green are those valued lands. Those are great parcels that are greater than 20 acres in size with land use that is compatible with the conservation easement. And then in dark green, they meet that definition, but they're also within drinking water protection areas. And those would be, for our partnership, what we would consider most valued lands. So that was a step one of filtering out the parcels that we want to be targeting. And then step two would be assigning different indicator values per parcel. And these are the exact same as our V1 modeling, so I'll go through them a little bit quicker. But there's 5 water quality indicators, 4 programmatic indicators, a geographic indicator. For each of those, I'll show a map that shows the indicator itself and then shows it on the next map overlaid with the targeted parcel. So here's in brown all the karst topography that we have in the counties. When I turn on those targeted parcels layer, you can see in brown, all the parcels in brown have some acreage of karst, which is our measurement. The ones that are still in light green or dark green do not have karst. Streams data set, we talked about this at our January 15th meeting. This was what we decided was we were going to use a national hydrography data set from 2018. When I turn on, again, the parcels, you can see in blue, all those parcels have some linear feet, which is our measurement of streams. The ones in dark green are like not. Matching pretty closely with that layer would also then be riparian forest buffers at 100-foot buffer width, the measurement being of riparian forest buffers. And so in light green here, kind of in a lime green, you can see parcels that have some acreage of riparian forest buffers. This is our development one. I'll just pause to explain this one again. Within the two counties, there are different areas where the county entities are saying this is where we want growth to occur. In Jefferson County, those are referred to as urban growth boundaries. In Berkeley County, it's their growth management area. So you can see within the map, there are places where you see straight through to the aerial imagery. That's where our counties are saying they want growth to occur. And then the dark brown to kind of light yellow colors is a data set from the Hagerstown Eastern Panhandle Metropolitan Planning Organization, where they're looking at projected changes in household growth. The value they used in that data set is called HH delta, so household delta, household change. This is one where we talked on January 15th. This data set had been called development before. That a better nomenclature for this, because it's measuring changes in household growth, is actually urban sprawl. So nomenclature aside, it's the same data set. And when I turn on the layer, again, what we would be prioritizing in our methodology here is if you see parcels that are outside of those planned growth areas, especially parcels that are in that dark brown, those are parcels where we're saying growth is expected to happen there, but our local planning agencies for our two counties say that's not where growth should occur. So that's where we would want to prioritize conservation easements to where hopefully growth will occur within our planned growth areas and conserve the areas outside of that. Tree canopy data set, when you turn on the parcels, when you look at parcels greater than 20 acres in size, pretty much all of these parcels, all but maybe one or two, have some acreage of tree canopy on them. Proximity to conserved lands. This is a data set that we worked with Mark and Liz and Adam and Emily to get all of the updated conserved lands data, the most accurate updated data here. When we turn that layer on, you can see parcels that are in a darker blue are adjacent or within 50 feet to kind of account for road widths. If it's across the street, it's still adjacent. But, and then parcels that are in a lighter blue are probably further away, with the hope of creating some denser conservation clusters and prioritizing that. Battlefields, when you turn it on, you can see in light brown where the battlefield parcels are, where they have some acres of battlefields. Qualifying soil, they have, less than 50 acres of prime soils or qualifying soils. Biodiversity data set from Virginia DNR. When you turn on the parcels in yellow have some acreage of biodiversity. And then lastly, our three priority watersheds that were selected also in our first modeling process because of their direct relation to drinking water supplies and drinking water protection areas. When you turn on the parcels, the ones in dark blue are obviously parcels that are within those priority watersheds. So those are all the data sets. And again, we assign 0 to 20 scores based off of three predefined thresholds. The difference here in this updated modeling is that we used minimum and maximum thresholds. We'll talk about what that means. So here's the 10 indicators. You can see the thresholds we use for our V1 modeling were stepped up. If you had 0 acres of cars, you got 0 points. 1 to 50 acres, 5 points. 50 to 100, 10 points. These ended up, the more we looked at it over the last year, being a little bit arbitrary. So what we did this time was still select minimum and maximum areas. So for karst, we could say if it's 0 acres of karst, you got 0 points. If you have 200 or anywhere more than 200 acres of karst, you got the maximum score of 20 points. And then we proportionally scaled in between those minimum and maximum values the 0 to 20 points, depending on if you had 0 to 200 acres. So again, a proportionate scaling, that's what the min-max means. And then we did use acres as the measurement for battlefields and biodiversity. Last time around, this was a little bit more binary, where it was 0 points for no battlefields or 20 points for battlefields. 0 points for no biodiversity, 20 points for biodiversity. And one of the things we heard at the last meeting was acreage is still the most, across the board, the most important factor here. Bigger parcels are better. So to try to account for that, we did what we could to then say, instead of just saying no battlefield, 0 points, 0.0001 acres of battlefield, you get 20 points. It was that same proportionate scaling. If you had 0 acres of battlefield, 0 points. More than 200 acres, 20 points. Anywhere in between, proportionally scaled between 0 to 20 points. Just like last time, added those 10 scores together. Parcels closer to the maximum score were the priority. So now let's look really quick at the results of that. They will be shown, just like before, on a live interactive map on the CloudRibs website. The main differences in how these maps are displayed is what we want to talk about, and what's that's called is symbology, how the map looks as you convey it, what colors you're showing, what values you're showing. In our current V1 modeling, what's still up on the website, we have high, medium, and low priority is what we show. And what we're proposing with this update, similar to what we talked about at our January 15th meeting, is to show those targeted parcels, those most valued lands. So this is what we're proposing our map would look like online when you go to it. You would see this, you would see these targeted parcels. And again, what we did was we targeted parcels that we consider valued lands, and the community can understand this. They can see, okay, these are the type of properties that are important and compatible with the conservation easement. And then we further prioritized those valued lands, and we prioritize them for us. We prioritize them as an internal tool that we can use to prioritize our outreach. And so this symbology, I do sincerely believe it's cleaner, it's clearer, and it's overall better for our outreach efforts. As again, all of these parcels are not just valuable, but they're compatible with the conservation easement. And so just to show as a comparison, a few things you'll see in between looking at V1 on the left and this updated modeling on v1.1, the biggest difference here, again, is symbology. Well, there are differences, of course, with this V1. We did 1.1. We did a two-step filtering process at the very beginning to look at valued lands that were outside drinking water protection areas. So there's more parcels that show up on this new model. But aside from that, what you're seeing is a difference in symbology. And what happened in this, our first V1 method is we sent a bit of a confusing message. And saying that any of these parcels that are shown on this map, any of those 1,100 that are shown on that map on the left, are low priority. And so we kind of created a false dichotomy that we cared only about the blue priority parcels, which was not helpful toward the overall messaging that land conservation is good and that you should consider that. So in this updated model, we can fix that by conveying just simply the targeted parcels. These are the valued lands and the most valued lands. That prioritization data, really importantly, is still available. Anyone could click on a parcel and get all the specific data, all the acres of buffers, linear feet of streams, acres of biodiverse areas, all those things. So they can still explore the data, and we would still have it on our back end that we could use for prioritizing our outreach. So again, we targeted parcels we consider valued lands, and then we further prioritized for us for outreach purposes. So this is just all those same steps together, everything we just went through. And again, those next steps, now that you've watched this, would be just to share your thoughts on the updated GIS prioritization model in Jamboard. I'll send you that link again. It is shown here with this 3 specific questions. What, if any, remaining questions do you have after watching the presentation? Do you approve of these updates? Hopefully you're comfortable after our January 15th meeting with these updates. Everything we did here was based off that conversation. And then any additional feedback you have. So that's everything for this presentation. Thank you for listening. Looking forward to hearing your responses soon.